The quiet crossing, where intuition recognizes what the mind cannot yet explain. How reclaiming intuition and the heart restores your original way of knowing and helps you recognize the quiet moments that quietly change everything. The surface is always the last place transformation arrives, the moment you almost missed. Have you ever noticed that the moments which quietly changed your life almost never looked important when they happened? No fireworks or thunderclaps, no certainty, no voice or MC announcing. Your life changes here. No dramatic revelation, no perfect clarity, no guarantees. Just an ordinary Tuesday, a walk, a conversation, a sentence in a book, a quiet sunrise. Or while washing dishes or looking out of the window, or sitting up in your car before going inside. And then, later, you look back and realize everything changed there. Not because your circumstances suddenly became different, because you did. What if the most important crossing in your life are not the loudest? What if they are so quiet that we almost miss them? And what if the real question isn't whether life has been speaking to us, but whether we've remembered how to recognize its language? Because perhaps the greatest tragedy is not that intuition disappears, perhaps it is that we slowly stop trusting it. A moment of recognition. Before we go any further, I'd like to invite you into the conversation. Have you ever looked back and realized that ordinary moment quietly changed everything? Not the biggest moment, the quiet one. The one you almost overlooked. If one comes to mind, share just 2 words in the comments. I remember. No explanation required, recognition is enough, because someone else may read those words and realize they are standing in one of those moments right now. While we almost always miss the crossing, most of us have been taught to expect transformation to arrive dramatically, with certainty, with immediate confidence, with unmistakable signs. We imagine that when life truly changes, we'll know immediately. But life rarely unfolds that way. The deepest transformations often begin beneath conscious awareness, long before the outer world reflects them, long before our thinking catches up. Long before we have language for what is happening. A seed does not announce the moment it begins germinating beneath the soil. An embryo does not declare the instant billions of cells begin organizing into a coherent human being. The foundations of a cathedral span years beneath the earth before anyone admires the structure rising towards the sky. Life has always begun invisibly. The visible is usually the announcement, the groundbreaking, not the beginning. Perhaps our own transformation follows the same wisdom. And perhaps the greatest tragedy is not that intuition disappears. Can I ask you something? When was the last time you ignored a quiet inner knowing, only to realize later it had been right all along? If that has happened to you, write 1 word. Yes. You don't need to explain. Recognition is enough. When science meets spirit, developmental psychology has long observed that profound change often reorganizes our internal world before our external behavior fully reflects it. Neuroscience suggests that the brain is constantly updating its internal models through lived experience, integrating new information beneath conscious awareness before insight becomes fully available. Many of our deepest shifts begin implicitly. We recognize them consciously only after they have already begun reshaping us. Contemplative traditions have expressed this through different language. They remind us that revelation often arrives as a whisper, a small voice rather than a spectacle. That wisdom rarely forces itself upon us. It quietly waits until we become available to recognize it. Different disciplines, different vocabularies, one recurring human experience. The visible follows the invisible. Recognition follows preparation. The crossing begins long before we realize we've crossed. Viktor Frankl said, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response." Frankl wasn't simply describing behavior. He was describing the recovery of inner freedom. The crossing often begins in that space, not when circumstances change, when consciousness does. What if the problem was never your intuition? Here is a possibility that quietly changes everything. What if intuition has never abandoned you? What if it has simply been conditioned out of your awareness? As children, most of us sensed far more than we could explain. We noticed the emotional atmosphere in a room. We felt when something wasn't right. We trusted what expanded us. We withdrew from what contracted us. Long before we had sophisticated language, we possessed direct knowing. Then life began teaching us something else. Move faster, be more productive, fit in, perform, compare, compete, don't be too sensitive, don't overreact, don't trust your feelings, prove it, explain it, justify it. And gradually, the external world became more authoritative than our own direct experience, and our logical brain alone started governing our lives, and intuition was relegated to the background. Not because intuition disappeared, because we slowly stopped believing it. We learned to trust noise over stillness, analysis over awareness, approval over inner knowing, performance over presence. No wonder so many people arrive at midlife feeling disconnected from themselves. They are not missing a faculty, they are remembering one that makes them more whole and complete. The heart was never what we were told. And perhaps nowhere has this misunderstanding been greater than with the heart. We have been taught to think of the heart as a pump, the place of emotion, romance, sentiment, feelings. But across the world's greatest wisdom traditions, the heart has always meant something far deeper and vaster. It is the center of wisdom, the place where conscience, wisdom, courage, love, and relationship with the divine converge. The heart is not simply where we feel, it is where we orient ourselves toward what is most deeply true. Science offers another fascinating perspective. The heart is not merely a mechanical pump. It possesses its own intrinsic nervous system. It communicates continuously with the brain through neural pathways, hormones, and electrical signaling. The human heart generates the strongest rhythmic electromagnetic field in the body, measuring roughly 60 to 100 times stronger electrically and up to 5,000 times stronger magnetically than the brain's field. Research into heart-brain communication suggests that the state of the heart influences attention, emotional regulation, and physiological coherence throughout the body. Science and spirit are not competing here. They are illuminating different dimensions of the same aspect, the same mystery. Perhaps the heart is neither merely symbolic nor merely biological. Perhaps it is one of the primary places where meaning becomes embodied, where truth stops being an idea and becomes a lived experience. As we return to the heart as the main guide, informing the brain about direction, we re-establish the proper partnership between intuition, inspiration, and logic and reason. Intuition was never lost. It was gradually spoken over. It was gaslit. Healing is not creating intuition. It is reducing the noise that prevents you from hearing it and bringing it back to the center stage as our inner compass. Pause for a moment. No analysis, no searching for the right answer, simply notice. As you've been listening, what happened inside you? Did your breathing change? Did your shoulders soften? Did something become quieter? Or perhaps did something resist? Whatever you noticed, honor it. Recognition often arrives before explanation. And sometimes That first quiet recognition is a course in itself. Share one word in the comments as it signals the collective that they are not alone in this process of remembering. In the next movement of this transmission, we'll restore intuition to its rightful place by exploring the original architecture of human knowing. While the heart recognizes, the nervous system translates, the body expresses, and only then does the mind begin explaining what has already become true. Because the mind is extraordinary, it simply isn't the first one to know. The architecture of knowing. While the heart recognizes before the mind explains. Perhaps the greatest misunderstanding about intuition is that we've tried to locate it in the mind. We ask ourselves, what do I think? What makes logical sense? Can I prove this? Reason is one of humanity's greatest gifts. It allows us to analyze, discern, imagine, create, execute, strategize, question, integrate. The goal has never been to silence the mind. The goal is to restore it to its rightful place, because something remarkable happens before thought ever begins. Something recognizes. Long before we explain an experience, we've already begun living it. Long before we can defend the truth, something in us has already responded. The mind is extraordinary, it simply isn't the first to know. The heart is. And that is where our intuition becomes accessible. Intuition not only feels what is true, but it also predicts and creates. Putting our inner world back into right relationships. For generations, we've thought that knowing begins with thinking. Think harder, analyze more, gather more information. If you can't explain it, don't trust it. But what if the natural order has quietly been reversed? What if thinking was never meant to lead the entire human experience? What if it was meant to serve it? Perhaps authentic knowing unfolds more like this. The heart recognizes and ignites. The nervous system translates. The mind explains and strategizes. The body expresses. Not because one is superior to another, because each has its own wisdom and function, its own language, its own purpose. The heart recognizes meaning. The nervous system immediately asks, is this safe? Is this familiar? Can I remain open? The body begins expressing that conversation through expansion when faced with truth, or contraction when confronted with illusion. Through breathing, posture, sensation, energy, and presence. Only then does the mind begin weaving the story. The explanation and logic often arrive last. Yet we've been conditioned and trained ourselves to trust it first. Perhaps awakening is not learning a new way of knowing. Perhaps it is remembering the original order. When science meets spirit. For centuries, wisdom traditions describe the heart as the center of discernment, conscience, courage, and direct knowing. Modern culture gradually reduced it to little more than a passive symbol of emotion. Science is beginning to reveal a far more interesting picture. The heart possesses an intrinsic network of neurons more than the brain, sometimes described as its own little brain, and communicates continuously with the brain through neural pathways, hormones, and rhythmic electrical activity. This ongoing dialogue influences attention, emotional regulation, stress responses, and whole body coordination. Researchers studying heart-brain coherence have observed that when breathing, attention, emotional state, and physiology become synchronized, the nervous system shifts into a more coherent pattern. People frequently report greater clarity, resilience, improved emotional regulation, and a quieter mind. Not because coherence magically provides answers, but because it reduces internal interferences. Coherence doesn't tell us what is true. It helps us become available to recognize what already is. Contemplative traditions have been pointing toward this experience for centuries. Different languages, different methodology, one recurring human reality. When the heart, mind, nervous system, and body begin working together rather than competing for control, clarity naturally increases. Now pause here, not to think, to notice. What sentence so far felt less like new information and more like remembering? That's usually where transformation begins. Blaise Pascal said, "The heart has its reasons, which reason knows nothing of." Notice, Blaise Pascal wasn't rejecting reason. He was recognizing that human knowing exceeds rational analysis alone. And it was Carl Jung who said, "Your vision will become clear only when you look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens." Different language, one human experience. Coherence is not certainty. Certainty demands guarantees. Coherence simply allows you to safely recognize the next truthful step. I'd love to know, have you spent more of your life trusting your thoughts or trusting your direct experience? No right answer here. Just notice and comment for the collective to witness something we all did at some point. Awareness always comes before change. The difference between intuition and survival. This distinction may be one of the most important you'll ever learn, because not every strong and intense feeling is intuition, and not every quiet feeling is fear. Survival has its own language. It speaks urgently. It catastrophizes. It wants immediate certainty. It demands resolution yesterday. It scans constantly for danger. Intuition speaks differently. It rarely shouts. It doesn't need to convince. It doesn't need to negotiate endlessly. It simply remains patient, steady, and present. Fear says, "Hurry." Intuition whispers, "Listen." Fear seeks control. Intuition seeks alignment. Trauma reacts. Wisdom responds. Hypervigilance scans. Presence notices. One contracts, the other expands. Learning this distinction isn't about becoming more spiritual, it's about becoming more discerning. The more regulated your nervous system becomes, the easier these voices are to distinguish. Discernment is not acquiring a new language, it is remembering one you've always spoken fluently. Now let me ask, which voice has been speaking louder lately? Fear, urgency, or that quiet knowing you've been negotiating with? Leave one word in the comments. That's enough. Albert Einstein said, "The intuitive mind is a secret gift, and the rational mind is a faithful servant." Whether or not we agree with the interpretation of Einstein's words, they point towards something remarkably consistent with what we've explored today. The difficulty begins when the servant becomes the master. A simple practice for returning to coherence. The next time you're facing an important decision, don't ask your mind first. Pause, lengthen your exhale, place one hand gently over your heart, not because the heart contains magical answers, but because this simple act often helps shift your nervous system towards greater regulation and coherence. Now ask yourself one question. What already feels quietly true? Don't force an answer. Don't argue with it, simply notice. Sometimes the deepest knowing arrives not as a sentence, but as a softening, a release, a quiet sense of yes. Or a gentle contraction that says, "Not this." The mind may take hours, days, or even months to understand what your deeper knowing recognizes in an instant. Honor both. The heart offers truth, direction, and guidance. The mind helps to steward it easily. This is not choosing one over the other, it's allowing each to fulfill its rightful role. Antonio Damasio said, "We are not thinking machines that feel, we are feeling machines that think." Modern neuroscience increasingly recognizes that cognition and emotion are deeply intertwined rather than separate systems. Perhaps wisdom has always known this. A moment of recognition. I'd like to pause here because this may be more familiar than you realize. Have you ever known something weeks, months, perhaps even years before your mind could fully explain it? Maybe you sensed a relationship had quietly come to its natural conclusion. Maybe you knew it was time to leave careers long before you had another opportunity. Maybe you felt called towards something that made no logical sense until one day it did. If that happened to you, write just 2 words in the comments. I knew. Nothing more, no explanation, just recognition. Because someone else may need the courage to trust the quiet knowing they have been arguing with for far too long. The crossing begins here. The quiet crossing doesn't happen when you finally understand everything. It begins when you stop demanding that truth arrive only through explanation. When you allow the heart to recognize, the nervous system to regulate, the body to express, and the mind to become a faithful interpreter rather than the sole authority. Not less intelligent, more integrated, not less rational, more whole. And perhaps this is the beginning of true wisdom. Because once you recover your original way of knowing, another question naturally emerges. If intuition is becoming clearer, how do you distinguish what truly belongs to you from what belongs to your family, your culture, your conditioning, or the collective field itself? That is where our next transmission begins. Because awakening doesn't stop at remembering yourself. It gradually teaches you to read reality through every dimension of your being. It teaches you field literacy, how to communicate directly with the field, God, source, or the universe. What happens inside you when you stop trying to force an answer and simply allow yourself to become more coherent? Tell me, I'm genuinely curious. Notice and comment below. Rumi said, "There is a voice that doesn't use words. Listen." The invitation has never been to become mystical. It has been to become available. The quiet crossing. When consciousness changes, everything rearranges. Perhaps this is why profound transformation can feel so disorienting. Not because life suddenly becomes chaotic, but because consciousness quietly changes the place from which you are living and observing it. And when the center changes, everything organized around that center begins rearranging itself, like relationships, priorities, time, success, purpose. Even the questions you ask. What once felt urgent may no longer deserve your attention. What once seemed impossible may suddenly become obvious. What once looked like security may begin to feel like confinement. What once felt like sacrifice may reveal itself as devotion. Nothing outside may have changed overnight, yet everything feels different. Not because reality has become unfamiliar, but because you are no longer interpreting it from the same place. This is why awakening can feel so jarring. It doesn't simply give you new answers, it reorganizes perception itself. It turns assumptions inside out. It exposes invisible agreements you've been living inside without realizing they were there. It reveals that what once appeared permanent was often only familiar, and familiarity is not always truth. Sometimes it is simply habits repeating patterns on autopilot. When the world turns upside down, many people become frightened here. The old maps no longer work. The strategies that once brought success lose their authority. Advice that once felt obvious begins sounding strangely incomplete. You stop asking, "How do I get ahead?" and begin asking, "What is actually true for me now?" That question changes everything. Because truth does not simply improve the old life, it reorganizes it. The world may look the same, the one looking is no longer the same. And once perception changes, participation changes. You begin choosing, speaking, listening, leading, working, and loving differently. Not because you adopted a new philosophy, but because your center of gravity has shifted. A new frequency, a new observer entered the picture. When science meets spirit, systems theory reminds us that when the organizing principle of a complex system changes, the behavior of the entire system changes with it. The individual parts may remain the same, the relationship between them do not. Developmental psychology describes similar shifts as transformations in meaning making. The same event is experienced differently because the structure through which it is interpreted has evolved. Contemplative traditions have expressed this in another way. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind, it says. Not merely changing opinions, changing consciousness. Different languages, one recurrent pattern. The quality of your perception influences the quality of your participation. Consciousness does not simply change what you see, it changes the place from which you are seeing. The crossing was never somewhere else. Many people imagine awakening as arriving somewhere new, a better place, the fifth dimension, a higher state, another reality. Perhaps the crossing is far simpler and far more intimate. Perhaps it is not arriving somewhere else. Perhaps it is finally arriving within yourself. Home has never been a destination. Home is the place from which you begin relating to everything else. Not through fear, not through performance, not through borrowed identities, but through presence. The crossing is not leaving the world behind. It is entering it more completely, with clearer eyes, a steadier nervous system, a quieter mind, a more coherent heart, and a growing willingness to meet life as it is, rather than as fear insists it must be. A final invitation. I'd like to leave you with one question, not one to answer quickly, one to feel. Where in your life have you been waiting for certainty before trusting what your deepest knowing has already recognized? Sit with this. You don't need to solve it today. Just notice. Sometimes awareness itself begins the transformation. A daily practice of remembering. For the next 7 mornings, before reaching for your phone, before opening your calendar, before entertaining the demands of the day, pause. Place one hand gently over your heart, one over your abdomen. Take 3 slow breaths with longer exhales. Then quietly ask, what is already true before I begin thinking about my day? Not what should I do or what needs fixing, simply what is already true. Carry that question with you. You may discover that intuition has been waiting patiently, not for you to become someone else, but for you to become quiet enough to hear it. If this transmission helped you recognize something you quietly known for a long time, I'd love to hear from you. Complete this sentence in the comments. Today I remembered one sentence. No performance, no perfect wording, just one honest recognition. Because recognition deepens when it is witnessed, and someone reading your words may finally trust what they have been sensing all along. Where we go next? Today we restored something precious, not new but original. We reclaimed intuition. We restored the heart to its rightful place. We remembered that the mind is a brilliant interpreter, not the main doorway to truth. But another question naturally emerges. If intuition is becoming clearer, what exactly is it perceiving? Reality is far richer than the physical world alone. We live simultaneously through physical, emotional, mental, relational, symbolic, archetypal, collective, and spiritual dimensions that continually influence one another. Most of us were simply not taught how to read them. If this transmission helped you trust yourself a little more, don't keep it to yourself. Send it to someone who has forgotten that they are already carrying a quiet wisdom within them. In our next transmission, we'll begin exploring the 7 dimensions of human experience, a practical map for becoming literate in the many ways reality communicates. Because awakening is not escaping the world, it is learning to perceive it in its fullness without overwhelm or distortions. And once perception expands, participation naturally flows. Perhaps the quiet crossing was never the moment life finally began speaking to you. Perhaps it was the moment you became quiet enough to realize it never stopped. T.S. Eliot said, "We shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time." Perhaps awakening has never been about escaping your life. Perhaps it has always been about returning and finally recognizing the home that has quietly been waiting beneath every identity you outgrew. The surface is always the last place transformation arrives. Heal thee, rise sovereign. Still Fire 1111. Welcome home. The frequency calls, the fire rises. Enter at your own shift. Still Fire 1111. And if this resonated with you, subscribe to the series. Download the free ebook Energy is Everything, using science and spirit to master vibrational reality, free for subscribers of Still Fire 1111. And to celebrate my launch on Heal Me, book a free 20-minute discovery call. This is not about becoming someone else. This is about finally allowing who you are to organize your life. Heal deep, rise sovereign. The fire rises and now it radiates. Enter at your own shift. Welcome.